Elias Ward lived alone at the edge of the old Terran colony. The city around him had turned to rust and silence, its streets cracked by time and storms, every night. He returned from the broken factories, carrying a small bag of ration cubes, cheap soup, and a piece of stale bread. He never complained. He had seen worse during the war. He had seen planets burn and friends vanish into the stars. But this world was quiet, too quiet. The colony lights flickered weakly against the cold wind. He liked the silence until one night something changed. As he sat near the alley behind his shack, he heard a faint sound like a small cry, soft and shaky at first. He thought it was an animal, but when he turned, he saw two small shapes hiding behind a pile of broken crates. Big eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Not human eyes, alien eyes, silver and bright. The figures were thin, trembling, their tiny hands clutching each other's arms. Elias froze. He knew what aliens meant on the frontier. Trouble, danger, sometimes even death. The Galactic Patrol had abandoned this area years ago, leaving only scavengers and desperate refugees. Still, he couldn't walk away. Something inside him refused to. He tore a piece of his bread and placed it near the crates, pretending not to notice them. Then he walked back slowly to his small home and sat quietly. He didn't look back, but he heard small footsteps, soft chewing, and then silence. The next morning, the bread was gone. For the next few days, he did the same. He would leave food on a metal plate and sit nearby pretending to work on his broken radio. Sometimes he would hum softly, letting them know he was not dangerous. He never spoke to them, and they never spoke to him on the seventh night. As the wind howled across the ruined colony, he finally saw them clearly. Two small children, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with pale blue skin and glowing veins under their arms. Their clothes were torn, their faces tired, but their eyes were full of life. One of them, the girl, held a tiny piece of metal shaped like a pendant, and she looked at him carefully before speaking. "Why do you give us food?" she asked, her voice small but clear. Elias shrugged. "Because you look hungry," he said simply. The boy beside her whispered, "Mother said never to trust humans." Elias smiled weakly. "Then don't trust me, just eat." They looked at each other, confused but grateful. After that night, the children began to come closer. They sat a few steps away from him, sharing small pieces of food. Sometimes the girl, who called herself Lara, asked questions. "Are you a soldier?" Elias nodded. "Once. Did you fight the Sky People?" she asked. He laughed softly. "Maybe," and changed the topic. Days passed, and the strange bond grew. He repaired their clothes with old fabric, gave them warm blankets, and showed them how to light a small fire safely. They told him their names, Lyra and Tovin, and said they were lost, though they never explained how. Whenever he asked where their parents were, they grew quiet and looked toward the stars. At night, Elias often saw movement at the far end of the street, shadows that didn't match the wind, reflections that moved when everything else was still. Once, he saw a flash of blue light like a scanner beam passing over his door. He stepped outside, but the street was empty. He began to feel watched. One evening, while he sat near the fire, Lyra suddenly gripped his hand. "Someone is here," she whispered, her silver eyes wide with fear. Elias looked around, but the alley was empty. Only the hum of distant machinery filled the air. He took his old blaster from the drawer, just in case. He didn't like weapons anymore. But something about the way the girl trembled made his chest tighten. "Stay inside," he said, standing in the doorway. Scanning the shadows, nothing moved. But the air felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. That night, Elias could not sleep. He lay on his old bed, listening to the wind tapping against the window. Suddenly, a soft metallic sound echoed from outside. Like claws on metal, he grabbed his blaster and stepped out. The street was empty, but near the food plate, something had been scratched into the dirt. 3 words, written in a sharp alien script that his translator barely caught. It read, "You should not," then space, "have fed them." Elias's breath caught. He looked up and saw a faint light high above the colony blue, cold and silent, moving slowly across the night sky. For a moment, he thought it was a satellite. Then it stopped moving, hovering right above his shack. A chill ran down his spine. He stepped back, holding the blaster tight, staring upward, and in that eerie blue glow, he saw a massive shadow slowly turning, like a ship silent, watching. The children were nowhere in sight. The plate was empty again. Elias whispered to the empty street, "What have I done?" The light faded, leaving the alley in darkness. The wind carried a faint echo, almost like a whisper in a strange alien tongue. And in that lonely, dying colony, Elias Ward realized that feeding 2 hungry children had drawn the eyes of something vast. Powerful and dangerous, he stood there as the night swallowed the stars, unaware that this small act of kindness had already begun to change the fate of worlds. Elias Ward woke before dawn, his breath visible in the cold air. The strange message scratched into the dirt haunted his mind. "You should not have fed them," it said, and he didn't know who had written it. But he felt eyes on him even when the street was empty. He walked outside, scanning the sky. The blue light that had hovered above the colony was gone, but a faint hum still echoed in the distance. The city's metal towers glowed faintly in the pale morning light. Broken and forgotten, like skeletons of an ancient beast, he thought about leaving. But when he saw the 2 small shapes waiting by the alley, he knew he couldn't. Lyra and Tovin stood there with their thin arms wrapped around each other. They looked frightened, like they hadn't slept at all. Lyra's voice was shaky. "The sky eyes found us," Elias frowned. "What are the sky eyes?" "Hunters," she whispered. "They come from the high clouds. They take children like us." Elias knelt and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe here," he said softly, though his voice carried more hope than certainty. He didn't understand what they were running from, but he knew he couldn't send them away. The boy, Tovin, looked up at him and said, "Mother will come soon." That night, the wind picked up again, and Elias began to hear things, soft clicks, like metal feet walking on the rooftops. Shadows moved across the walls, though there was no moonlight. He looked through the small window and saw something tall and thin standing far away, too still to be human. He shut off his lantern and waited. Heart-pounding, minutes passed like hours, until the shadow slowly turned its head, glowing eyes meeting his from across the street. Then it vanished, disappearing into thin air. Elias didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he found small round marks burned into the metal wall beside his door. They weren't bullet holes. They were scorch marks, precise and circular. He touched one and pulled his hand away. It was still warm. He knew then that whatever those hunters were, they weren't from this colony. He started preparing quietly. He fixed his old scanner drone, patched his comms link, and reinforced the door with scrap metal. He didn't tell the kids. He didn't want to scare them more than they already were. But he could feel it. The watchers were getting closer. As night fell, Lyra sat by the small fire, staring at the sky. "Elias," she said softly, "why are humans kind?" He looked up from his tools. "We're not always kind," he said. "But sometimes we try." She smiled faintly. "Mother said humans were dangerous," he chuckled. "She's not wrong." Later that night, the wind stopped. Everything went silent. No hums, no creaks. not even the usual buzzing from the power lines. Elias stepped outside and saw the air shimmer like heat rising off the ground. Then from that shimmer, a black figure appeared tall, armored, faceless, holding a spear of light. It spoke in a distorted voice. "Human, surrender the royal spawn." Elias froze. "The what?" "The royal children of the galactic house of Vera," the voice hissed. "Return them or be erased." He turned toward the shack where Lyra and Tovin hid. So they weren't just lost kids. They were something far more, something dangerous to protect. Elias gripped his old blaster, shaking. "I don't care who they are," he said. "You'll have to go through me." The creature tilted its head, as if studying him. Then it vanished in a flash of blue light. Leaving only the echo of static behind, Elias ran back inside, locking the door. The kids were huddled together, terrified, and Lyra whispered. "They found us." Elias pulled a blanket around them. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "I'll keep you safe. Outside." Faint shapes began to move through the fog, silent and watching. Dozens of glowing eyes lit up in the darkness beyond the street. They didn't attack. They just stood there, waiting. All through the night, Elias kept watch with his blaster ready. He didn't blink, didn't rest, only stared into the black mist as the unseen figures circled. By morning, they were gone, leaving only strange metallic footprints in the dirt. Elias didn't understand what kind of war he had just stepped into. He didn't know why a queen's children had fallen to his broken world. But one thing was clear: someone powerful wanted them back. And he was now standing in their way. That day, a strange new sound filled the air. A deep, rumbling thunder that didn't come from any storm. He looked up and saw the clouds above the colony parting like curtains. Through them, a massive ship descended, black and gold, its engines humming like 1,000 voices. The ground shook, windows shattered, and lights flickered across the horizon. The ship was unlike anything human-made, ancient, royal, alive. The children gasped. Tears in their glowing eyes, Lyra whispered, "Mother," as the massive vessel cast its shadow over the colony. Elias dropped his blaster slowly. He realized what the Watchers had been waiting for. They weren't hunters. They were guards. And the real danger had only just arrived. The ship's lights turned crimson, and a beam of light scanned the entire block. Then a voice filled the air, soft but powerful, echoing through every speaker and every mind. "Bring me the human who sheltered my children," it said. The queen had come. The ground trembled beneath Elias's boots. Dust and broken glass rained from the rooftops as the massive ship settled above the colony. Its shadow stretched for miles, swallowing everything beneath it. Every window reflected the same burning image, a black and gold vessel that blotted out the morning sky. The ship didn't roar like Terran warcraft. It hummed, deep and steady. As if it were alive, Elias shielded his eyes, his breath catching in his throat. He had seen battleships before, but this one was different. It was royal, ancient, and terrifyingly beautiful. Lyra clutched his arm, trembling. "She's here," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Mother has come." Elias looked at her in disbelief. "Your mother? She's in that ship?" Lyra nodded slowly, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "She's the Queen of Vera. And she's angry." The beam of light sweeping the colony stopped directly on Elias's shack. He stepped back as the air around him rippled, the ground glowing with blue sigils that appeared from nowhere. Then a figure descended, a tall alien in shimmering armor, face hidden behind a mask of gloss and gold. It spoke in a calm, mechanical tone. "The Queen summons you." "Human." Elias raised his blaster, his hands shaking. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Trying to sound brave, the armored guard tilted its head. "Refusal is not an option." Lyra stepped forward. Clutching Elias's hand, "Please," she said softly. "Don't hurt him." The guard paused, scanning the girl, then stepped aside as if receiving a silent command. The air shimmered again, and another figure appeared, taller, graceful, wearing robes that flowed like liquid light. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes radiant and cold. She needed no crown for anyone to know who she was. The Galactic Queen had arrived. Every movement she made was precise, as if time itself obeyed her. Her voice, when she spoke, echoed inside the mind more than in the ears. "You are the human called Elias Ward," she said. Her tone wasn't cruel, but it carried power the kind that could silence a battlefield. Elias nodded slowly, lowering his blaster. "I guess that depends who's asking," he said, trying to sound calm. The Queen's gaze flicked to the children hiding behind him. "You fed my offspring," she said, her voice softening. "You gave food to the heirs of my throne." Elias blinked, confused. They were just hungry kids. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you know what that means?" He shook his head. "I don't care who they are." They needed help. Silence filled the air. The guards around them shifted uneasily. Unsure whether to strike or kneel, the Queen stepped closer, her glowing eyes studying him like a strange puzzle. "You risked your life to protect them, even when the hunters warned you," she said. "Why?" Elias met her gaze. "Because no one else did," he said quietly. The Queen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. She turned slightly, her long robes whispering against the dirt. One of her generals, a tall warrior with black armor, stepped forward. "My queen," he said sharply. This human interfered with royal matters. He must be erased. The Queen raised her hand, silencing him instantly. "No," she said. He acted out of compassion, not rebellion. The general bowed but didn't hide his glare toward Elias. Lyra ran to her mother and hugged her tightly, her small frame trembling. The Queen knelt and held her daughter close, whispering in a language that sounded like starlight. Then she looked back at Elias, her voice quieter now. "They told me humans were monsters," she said. "You've made me doubt that." Elias rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "I'm not sure what to say to a queen," he muttered. "You already said enough," she replied, her tone calm but heavy with meaning. For a moment, the world seemed still. The ship above stopped humming, and the air grew warm. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from the sky. Striking the ground nearby with a thunderous blast, the guard shouted. The Queen raised a shield of energy around her and the children. Elias was thrown back, landing hard against the metal wall. The air filled with the crackle of combs and the roar of engines. Another fleet had appeared on the horizon's sleek ships, with red insignias glowing on their sides. The Queen's generals shouted, "It's the Varen Council's forces. They've come to finish what they started." The Queen's expression darkened, her calm breaking for the first time. "They dare attack me on foreign soil," she said coldly. "Ready the fleet." Elias stumbled to his feet, ears ringing. "Who are they?" He shouted. "Traitors," the Queen said. "Those who tried to kill my children." She turned to him, her silver eyes blazing. "You wanted to protect them. Human now, help me keep them alive." Her command carried no room for refusal. Elias nodded, gripping his blaster tighter. He had no idea how he could help a galactic ruler, but he couldn't walk away, not now. As explosions filled the sky and the colony shook under the pressure of the descending fleets, Elias realized he was no longer just a lonely engineer. He was standing between two empires. The Queen's guards surrounded them as plasma bolts streaked across the sky. Her ship's shields flared golden light, reflecting the chaos. She turned once more toward him and said, "Whatever happens, protect the children." And as the storm of war descended, Elias Ward, just one human among stars, stood ready to face it, unaware that the fate of an entire galaxy was about to hinge on the choices he would make. The sky was fire. Red streaks tore across the black clouds as enemy ships closed in on the Queen's fleet. The ground shook with every blast, dust rising like smoke over the ruined colony. Elias Ward crouched beside Lyra and Tovin, shielding them with his body as explosions rattled the walls. The Queen stood tall amid the chaos, her silver eyes glowing brighter than the flames around her. Energy shields shimmered over her soldiers, forming a barrier of light. Her voice was calm yet sharp. Commanding through the storm, Defensive Formation Delta 9. "Protect the children," she ordered. Elias could barely believe what he was seeing. Armored troops moved in perfect harmony. Plasma fire lit the sky. The Queen raised her hand, and a wave of energy burst outward, striking the enemy crafts. 3 of them fell in burning trails across the horizon. He turned to her, shouting over the noise, "Why are they attacking you? What do they want?" Her gaze flicked toward him, sorrow mixed with rage. "They want the throne," she said. "They want my bloodline erased." Another blast hit nearby. Throwing Elias off his feet, he rolled over, coughing, and saw the children crying beside the wreckage. He crawled to them, wrapping his arms around both. "You're safe," he whispered. "I've got you." Moments later, the Queen extended a hand toward him. A shimmer of light surrounded them, and in an instant they vanished from the battlefield. When the light faded, they stood inside the massive ship, the royal flagship of House Vera. The interior glowed with veins of gold and silver. Humming softly like a heartbeat, Lyra ran to her mother. Clinging to her dress, Elias looked around. Stunned, "Where are we?" he asked. "In safety," the Queen said, though her tone didn't sound convinced. They walked through long crystal halls lined with alien banners. At the center stood a great throne made of living metal, pulsing faintly with light. The Queen sat, looking weary but proud. For the first time, Elias saw her not as a goddess, but as a mother who had lost everything. She spoke softly. "When the coup began, they attacked my fleet, my palace, my family." Her eyes lowered to the children. "They killed their father, my king." Elias stayed silent, feeling the weight of her words. "I sent my children away to save them," she continued. "But the escape ship was struck down near your world." Lyra's voice trembled. "You said you would come for us." The Queen's lips curved into a sad smile. "And I did, little one." Elias looked between them, piecing everything together. "So the ones who came before," he said, "the Watchers, the Hunters, they were sent to find the kids before you did." She nodded. "They were agents of the Council, traitors who wear the Crown's colors, but serve their greed." He clenched his fists. "And you think they'll stop now?" Her gaze hardened. "No, human. They won't stop until I'm dead." For a long moment, the ship was silent except for the soft hum of its engines. Then the Queen rose and approached Elias. "You could have sold them," she said. "You could have used them to bargain for gold or safety." He frowned. "They were just kids." She tilted her head slightly. "Humans are strange creatures," she said quietly. "You fight wars and destroy worlds. Yet you feed the hungry without question." Before he could answer, a voice echoed through the ship's speakers, urgent and mechanical. "Your Majesty, the Council fleet has locked weapons shield impact in 30 seconds. Elias turned to her. "What do we do?" She extended her hand toward him, and a small device appeared, a glowing wristband of alien metal. "Put this on," she ordered. "It will link your mind to the ship's tactical systems." He hesitated. "I'm no soldier anymore." She looked him straight in the eyes. "You are now." The device latched around his wrist. Glowing blue, suddenly he saw flickers of data enemy formations. Power grids, weapon charge levels, all flashing inside his vision. It was overwhelming, but somehow familiar. His old Terran training responded instinctively. Muscle memory from years ago, he moved to the console. Hands trembling but steady enough. "Redirect your lower shields to the western flank," he said quickly. "They're preparing a plasma lance there." The alien officers hesitated. But the Queen nodded. "Do as he says," she commanded. A second later, the enemy fired. The plasma lance struck the shield, but instead of piercing it, it dispersed harmlessly across the redirected field. The entire bridge turned to Elias, astonished. He exhaled slowly. "Still got it." The Queen gave a faint smile. One filled with respect. "You just saved us." "Human," she said softly. Elias looked at her. "Not just you," he said, glancing at the children. "All of you." The battle outside raged for hours. With Elias's help, the royal fleet held their ground, forcing the enemy to retreat into deep space. When the silence finally returned, the Queen stood beside him. Her voice gentle now, almost human. "Elias Ward," she said. "You've done more than any of my commanders ever did." He shrugged. "I only did what I had to." She looked down, her expression unreadable. "There will be consequences," she said. "The Council will not forgive this defeat." He smiled faintly. "Let them come." Lyra and Tovin ran to him. Hugging his legs tightly, the Queen watched, her eyes softening once more. "You've earned a place in my empire," she said. "And perhaps—" "In my heart." Elias didn't know what to say, so he just nodded, but in his chest. He felt something new, a strange warmth he hadn't known in years. Far above the battered colony, the stars burned bright again. But in the quiet glow of the flagship, one truth had become clear. Kindness, once given freely, had changed the course of a galaxy, and somewhere in the dark beyond the stars, the Council prepared their next move. The war was far from over, but this time, the Queen would not fight it alone. The war ended with silence. The enemy fleet drifted in ruin across the sky, their engines dark and their signals gone. Smoke from the battle hung above the colony, like gray clouds caught between heaven and fire. Elias Ward stood beside the shattered window of the command deck. Staring at the stars, he could hardly believe what had just happened. A human mechanic from a forgotten world had helped save a galactic queen and her empire. The Queen of Vera stood beside him, her robes torn, her crown dim from battle, but her eyes steady and proud. "You fought like one of my own," she said quietly. Elias gave a tired smile. "Guess old habits don't die easy." The Queen turned toward the viewport, watching debris fade into the void. "The Council will come again," she murmured. "They will rebuild and strike back. Then we'll be ready," Elias said, his voice firm. The Queen looked at him. Truly looked this time, not as a human, not as an outsider, but as an equal. "You say we," she said. "You consider yourself part of my empire now?" Elias shrugged. "I don't know about empires," he said. "But I don't walk away from people who need me." She smiled faintly. Something rare and warm, Lyra and Tovin ran into the room, their laughter breaking the heavy silence. They threw their arms around Elias, nearly knocking him over. He laughed softly, ruffling their hair. "You two caused quite the storm," he said. The Queen watched the scene quietly, her heart softening. "In my empire," she said, "no one dares touch me without bowing." Elias looked at her, still smiling. "Maybe that's why they fear you. Or maybe," she said gently, "that's why I was alone." Later, as the royal fleet repaired above the colony, the Queen invited Elias to walk with her through the ship's observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass, thousands of them glittering like silver dust. She spoke softly. "Do you know what your people are called among the stars?" Elias shook his head. "Humans, Terrans." "Take your pick." She turned to face him. No, the old ones call you kindlers. Those who ignite light in dark places. He chuckled quietly. Sounds poetic. It is truth, she said. You found my children when even I could not. He looked down at his hands. Rough and scarred. I just gave them food. You gave them more, she said. You gave them hope. Her words hung in the air like a soft echo. Elias didn't know how to answer. So he stayed silent, watching the stars drift by. The queen stepped closer, her reflection merging with his in the glass. When this war ends, she said, I will rebuild my empire with a new law. He turned to her. What kind of law? One that remembers the kindness of one man, she said. A law that values compassion above fear. Elias laughed quietly. That's a big change for a galaxy like this. Her eyes gleamed. Then it's worth doing. Alarm suddenly pulsed faintly, in the distance low and steady, not of danger but of arrival. A ship approached from the outer rim, bearing the Terran insignia. Elias froze, his heart tightening. Earth Command? He whispered. The queen nodded. Your people answered my signal. Moments later, a voice crackled through the comms. Unknown flagship. This is Terran Navy vessel Vigilant Dawn. Identify yourself. The queen stepped forward, calm and regal. This is Her Majesty Sarathia of House Vera, she said. And beside me stands Elias Ward of Earth. The channel went silent for a long moment. Then the Terran captain's voice returned, shocked. Understood? We're reading a royal fleet. Are you allied? Elias smiled faintly, glancing at the queen. Guess we are now. The two fleets drifted side by side. Terran and Viran banners glowing in the light of twin suns. Two civilizations that once distrusted each other now stood as allies because one man had shared his meal. The queen turned to him once more. I will send envoys to your world, she said. I will tell them what humanity truly is. Elias nodded slowly. And what's that? She smiled. A species that feeds strangers in the dark. The moment stretched quiet and eternal. The children pressed their faces against the glass, pointing at the Terran ships, gleaming like diamonds. Elias placed a hand on the window, feeling the faint vibration of the engines. He thought of his old, quiet life on the colony, of loneliness and silence. And then he looked at the queen, at the stars, and at the two small children now laughing freely. He realized he was home, not on a planet, but among those he had chosen to protect. The queen's voice broke the silence one last time. Elias Ward, she said softly, your act of kindness will be remembered long after empires fall. He smiled. Let's hope so. Outside, the ships slowly turned toward the endless black, two lights traveling together through the stars. And in that moment, the galaxy whispered a new name for humanity. Not destroyers, not conquerors, but the ones who shared their food with the lost, the ones who changed everything